Welcome, everybody. Just a little music before we get started here in a couple minutes.
One down for you, shining on my heart, so you could see.
Go ahead and share in the chat, maybe where you're from, what the weather's like, what you know the name of the song, the artist.
Everything it seems, but for now I find it's only in my dreams, and I can change the world. I will be the sunlight in your universe. You think my love was really something good? Baby, if I could change the world. If I could be king, even for a day, I'd take you as my queen. I'd have no other way. And all of the world, this kingdom we have made, till then I'd be a fool, wishing for the day that I can change the world. I would be the sunlight in your universe. You would think my love was really something good, baby, if I could change the world. Baby, if I could change the world.
Well, I think we're going to get started here. It's the top of the hour. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this live Q&A on uncovering the potential of e-learning with Dr. Michael Allen, the CEO and founder of Allen Interactions, and Brandon Carson, who will be moderating this hour. My name is Carrie Zenz with Allen Interactions, and our mission here is to enhance the human mind and spirit through meaningful, memorable, and motivational learning and performance experiences. And we do that through a variety of services, including custom learning, digital engineering, strategic consulting, government services, staff augmentation, and our Allen Academy, where we have a lot of courses through to learn how to design and develop and evaluate meaningful, memorable, motivational learning experiences. We got a lot of really wonderful questions from everyone who submitted them. And I know that Dr. Allen and Brandon are really excited to have a conversation and to share their thoughts and views on your questions and get you answers. If we do not get to your question today, do not worry, we will be doing a follow-up Q&A blog. So any questions we didn't get to that were submitted, or any that you share with us today through the chat that we don't answer, we will follow up with them in a blog. Today's session is being recorded, so we'll be sending out the recording as well. Just a little bit about Dr. Allen and Brandon. Dr. Allen is, as I said, our CEO and founder of Allen Interactions. We've been in existence for almost 3 decades. He is known as the godfather of e-learning. He's a prolific author, having published, I think, 8 books, including 2 editions of Michael Allen's Guide to E-Learning and Leaving Addie for Sam. He's defined unique methods for instructional design development for creating meaningful, memorable, and motivational learning that leads to measurable results. And Brandon Carson is an innovative learning strategist and award-winning leader with years of corporate training experience in environments from startups to tech companies, retail and transportation, transportation, including Home Depot and Delta Airlines. He's a speaker and an author. He has a brand new book out called L&D's Playbook for the Digital Age, and also a course on that that's going to be starting in June through our Allen Academy. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Brandon.
Thank you so much, Carrie. And hello, everyone. Welcome to the Q&A with Dr. Allen. And I have to admit, I'm a little bit beside myself because this opportunity is really one that I've been looking forward to since 1996, which is when I got started in learning with Authorware. And it was the first tool I got to use. And I used it on the Mac back in the day because there was a Mac only version before it was ported to Windows. And so that's how I started my career in training. So Dr. Allen is the reason that I'm in this career. So I'm really excited to just share the virtual stage with such an icon as the creator of those icons that gave me a career. So thank you so much, Dr. Allen. And thank you everyone for joining us. As Carrie stated, we got a lot of questions given to us. And so today is about solving the puzzle from the e-learning perspective for you all, because the questions were really fantastic and they spanned a lot of areas that we get the opportunity to poke on Dr. Allen's brain a bit today. And so I'm just going to kick it off and get started right away. But you know, we're all monitoring the chat as well. So if anything comes up in the conversation that triggers you to share or question or make a comment, please use the chat for that. Carrie is monitoring that, and I'm also glancing at it as well. So we have some loose kinds of categorizations for the questions, but I'm just going to start and throw some things right at Dr. Allen. And this question comes from Dana, and it's really about content. So the question Dana is posing is, our L&D content tends to be a step behind the pace of agile project and product delivery, which a lot of us are living with right now. So this is a great question. Rather than moving alongside it, which is Dana's challenge, this makes it extremely difficult to develop just-in-time learning in anything but a classroom content delivery method. So she's asking, what best practices have you found, Dr. Allen, when partnering with clients and developing projects to produce effective e-learning when project delivery tends to be coming at the same time as the training need?
Well, good question. First of all, hi, everybody. Thanks for your time. So happy to be here. I'm going to do my best to at least make some comment that may be a surprise. So something that you haven't heard, a million times before. I feel like my claim to fame is age, which is I just had more opportunity to make more mistakes than you have.
And learn from them.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't want you to have to make the same mistakes. I would just love it if things that I've gone through, and I certainly haven't solved all problems by any means, but I got some solutions to some of the most common problems, obviously, and this is one of them. We had considerable experience with this when years ago Motorola pretty much owned the cell phone business, and we were engaged on an annual basis to develop training based on each one of the phones they introduced. And they introduced about 64 phones a year worldwide, globally. It's a lot of phones. Yeah. And our training was on the critical path. If the training wasn't done as scheduled, the phone rollout was delayed. And so we had to be working on training for a phone that was still in production or design or whatever phase it might be. And they were different phases. And so we had to be fast. The first thing, of course, is that we need a process that's both fast and flexible. How can we do that? Well, one of the ways we do that is by first looking at the type of skills we're teaching, not necessarily the specific skills, but rather going from those specific skills to what kind of things are we teaching? Are we teaching problem-solving skills? Are we teaching a process? There are many different kinds of performance that we're going to teach. And the screens might change, which button on a phone you might press, what you might click, where you might type, what the keyword might be, so forth. All of those things can be changing, but that doesn't mean you can't be designing your training. You could be doing it right alongside, because you're looking at what skills do people need, and then you can build interactions that are changeable. And that's the next step. So first, look generally at what kind of skills use appropriate paradigms. Build something for those paradigms in terms of how are you going to challenge learners, how are you going to give them helps, how are you going to give them feedback, how are you going to assess them, and so forth. And then make sure that your content, like the specific screens, the specific icons, the buttons, all those elements are separate from your logic. So you can just go change the database as the product changes. And so you can be right there on the spot. You know, you can probably have the training finished while they're still debugging the product, even if you started way after. So while this seems like an impossible challenge, I'd say, first of all, it's not an infrequent challenge. And second, there are good solutions to it.
That's a great response. I remember when I worked with Stanford, we used Authorware. This was back in the day. We used Authorware to create a course that would need to change because the products were being developed at the same time. Our Authorware file had no content in it. Everything was read externally into the program. And so I think creating that modular type of course system, if you can, is the way to go with that, because we were able to just put screenshots in folders when they were updated with software that changed. So great response there. Daniel has sent in a question that really goes around challenges in design, especially with subject matter experts. And his question goes along this line: how do you convince clients not to include every piece of information in the e-learning program that you're developing? We've all lived that, haven't we?
Well, of course, I'm laughing because this is another one that perhaps of even greater frequency. You know, if your clients is a group of lawyers, you might think of changing professions right away. They want everything in there all the time to safeguard them from liabilities. Of course, they're not worried about the training. They just don't.
Right.
Oh my gosh. So yes, too much content. There's always too much content and always too little content. Actually. So in interactive learning experiences, a book doesn't have enough content, because a book just answers the questions that the author felt like asking, you know, and didn't have to deal with mistakes that learners might make, and helping them understand what they didn't understand in the first paragraphs or the first presentation. But interactively, we have to look for many variances, additional examples when the first ones didn't suffice, and so on. So content is a challenge. But I do believe there are really good solutions, even for those SMEs who want every one of their precious words on the screen, you know, in text, by the way, of course. Love text. You know, I'm being facetious, of course, hate text, basically. You know, I want minimize text. People don't read with great comprehension on the screen. And so they make lots of mistakes just because they didn't read carefully. And there's that kind of anxiety, like, I want to get through this because, you know, I want it over with because, oh God, this is not very interesting, right? Well, we want to make it really interesting such that you want to dig right into it and spend the time that you need learning and practicing. So my first surprise might be design backwards. Design backwards. By that, you are so grateful to the SME for bringing you all their instructor notes and their manuals and everything. It's all right there, Michael. Just build training on this. I want to say how grateful I am that you brought that to me as I set it over to the side.
Right.
That's good. That's going to be good for us to reference when we have questions, right? So now, what are we going to do? I have a question for you, SMEs, and that is, what is the very last thing you would like learners doing to prove to you that they're ready to go into the field, that they've really learned this material? What's that last thing they should be doing? And we'll talk about building an interactive event where they can do that thing as close to a simulation as to the real thing, or it might even be the real thing under the supervision of an instructor. So we want to see them doing that last thing. Okay, then the question is, what mistakes do you think they might make? What are the most frequent mistakes people make? Oh, well, I can tell you all those. They always do this wrong and they always do that. Oh, all right. Why do you think they make those mistakes? Well, because they don't realize that these two steps have to be done in a specific order. That's something we better teach, isn't it? And so what starts coming out of that is that they are filtering all that knowledge they have to tell you what's really pertinent to the outcome behaviors that you're going after. And once you get your SMEs thinking that way and talking that way, they will actually help you reduce the overflow of content and make the experience not overwhelming to your learners. And they are also very likely to tell you things that are really important, tips and tricks and so forth, that aren't in all of those documents they brought, because it's based on their experience, right? And so I really think this working backwards, asking the SMEs what would be proof that they're really able to do the job, what are the essential skills, pieces of knowledge that they have to have that goes in there, and then we can easily say everything else is optional. I mean, we can have optional readings in there, sure. Want to know more? Click here, yep. No problem.
That's fantastic advice. It's almost like create your test first. What do they need to know before you're putting content in? I would think for the instructional designer, that's part of the biggest talent that you'll bring is parsing the SME's information into instructional messaging. That's great. So start with the end in mind. We've gotten a question from Stacy.
There was I don't mean to interrupt, just Tisha had a good comment about what you were just talking about. She just said, SMEs forget that they are the experts and their learners are not.
Wonderful.
And they need just enough to gain interest. I just wanted to share that.
Yes.
She shared in chat quick.
And you're right. I just saw that scroll up. Yeah, that's actually a great comment.
Yes, it's a big point because experts can't think like novices very well. Yeah. It's just, well, you just do this. What this are you talking about? And why did you know that was the appropriate thing to do now? Well, it just is.
I've been doing it for 20 years like that.
Yeah, it just always works for me. Thank you.
Yeah.
But I do want to mention, Brandon, that you used a word which is a little bit of a red flag for me, is that the test at the end, which I agree with you, but you also said, what do they need to know? I always want to say is, what do they need to be able to do, right? So right. They may know what should be done. They even may know how to do it, but they may not be able to do it. And so getting them able is the litmus test for me.
Yeah, that you're right. You're right. And thanks for that, because that is the holy grail. When you, especially for what we do, like right now I'm in the aircraft space and we're doing a lot of that type of training. What can they, and you can have a policy manual that's pretty thick, right? But what do they need to be able to do is excellent, right? Thank you for that. And thank you, Tisha, for that comment. Great stuff. Next question comes from Stacy, and it's about effective design and culture as well, which is an interesting combination. How do we create a stronger culture of learning in an organization that is becoming increasingly spread out and hybrid or remote, which we've all had to deal with the last year? How do we turn learning into something people look forward to doing and do more independently rather than just waiting for training events?
I want to send a gift for that question because I think that's a gift to me, and I really appreciate that question. It parallels much of my thinking, which is that a lot of our training problems would go away if people really found training beneficial to them. that this is training I want to take rather than that I have to take. And I would take it even if I didn't have to take it. In fact, I like that training so much, I'm going to take it again, just make sure I didn't miss anything. And I like that training so much. I think my friends should see the training that I get to take because it's such a privilege to be trained this way. These are typical comments, right?
Yeah,
It goes on all the time. But it can. That's the thing that's really important. It can. Movie theaters would be empty if people didn't find their time well spent there. That it was entertaining, it was insightful, it was an experience that they really like. Why isn't training exhibiting those same behaviors? Well, there are lots of reasons why. And, the first thing that I would say is that there's an overemphasis on content and not nearly enough emphasis on the experience itself. We think that our job is to make sure our content is accurate, that it's sequenced in a logical way, that nothing is missing, that all of the detail and the depth is there. We have good graphics to illustrate. We've carefully worded explanations. And wow, we're ready now for training. We just need to get that stuff out. Well, most training doesn't read like a novel with cliffhangers and you can't wait to read the next chapter. And, I read a lot of mystery novels. I never used to read anything fictional. And then my wife got me onto some stories that she really, really liked. And oh man, I was over the cliff then. I really enjoy some of the good writers. And many of the writers today write chapters that are like 3 pages long, 3 or 4 pages. They're very, very short, which means I always think I could read another one because I want to know where this is leading. And then, well, that one went fast. I could read another one. And pretty soon I've spent hours where I was intending to spend maybe 15 minutes. So there are some little things that make a big, big difference in how we will attend to things. And we can just lose ourselves in experiences that we find rewarding. Whereas we're watching the clock when it's experiences that we think, oh, how much more of this is there? And I'm never really going to remember all of this stuff anyway. They're just shooting so many things at me, one after another. I can't, oh my gosh, and yet a game, an electronic game, people will work right through lunch and dinner, and they'll stay up way too late and so on. All of the mechanisms that are used by novelists, by movie creators, by these games are available to us as trainers. If we'd only think how important it is that we attend to the learner's journey, is the way I like to call it. So we tend to think now of the journey as I'm just going from novice to capable. Okay, that's important. If I get there, is it going to stick? Have I practiced as much as I need to? Well, I practiced only as much as the program made me. And then I got out of here. I didn't practice more because I really enjoyed seeing my skills developing, and I could do it faster and I could make fewer mistakes each time. And I was leveled up to the next level where, the challenges are far more interesting and so on, all the things that game designers do. So I want to think, and I'm working with my designers now to say, okay, we're going to define what novices can and can't do, at least what's the range of entry skills we're expecting to see. And we're, of course, going to define the necessary skills at the end. And then we're going to set that aside because that's only part of our work. Now, what kind of attitudes might our learners have? Is everybody really enthusiastic about this? Is this training that a lot of people think, I shouldn't have to take this training because I've been doing this job forever? Yeah, I should probably be teaching it, not taking this course, Or are they anxious because they're afraid that they might expose lack of skills that everybody around them thinks that they have, and somehow they might be humiliated or embarrassed, so forth. So it just as defining what novice looks like, I want to describe how the learner might be feeling about this whole thing coming up. Are they apprehensive? Are they maybe grateful that this is going to happen? Do they feel like I have a tremendous need for this? And so forth. All those things I was describing are possibilities. And then I want to attend to those potential feelings in various ways as they take that journey, not just from novice to competency, but from a mix of feelings to an outcome of confidence. I can do this, and I know I can do it. And in fact, I'm going to be feeling joyful when I get a chance to show everybody how good I am at this. So I suppose in today's webinar, I don't have a lot of time to talk about how to do those things, but I think we're doing okay. Do you think I can go into a little more depth as to how to design the learner's journey?
Well, exactly. I would love that, right? And I think that part of this goes to Stacy's point about, now that we're distributed in how we work, how do we keep that connection, to not just the training experience or the learning experience, but also to that culture of learning in an organization, right?
Yeah, okay. Well, let me describe a case study for you of one technique that worked out just tremendously well for us. And that's work that we did for Mary Kay Cosmetics. Mary Kay has millions of beauty consultants. In fact, in our training program, we've reached well over 3 million people setting up onboarding to run their cosmetic business. Now, under the umbrella of Mary Kay, each consultant really sets up an independent business. So they buy products from Mary Kay and they resell them. So they have to finance their business. They have to put together a plan for how much product of which product do they think that they're going to be selling and so forth. So there's a business aspect to it in that regard. Then there's salesmanship. So a representative might just really love fashion and be very much a fan of cosmetics and beauty. But terrified of trying to sell something and being turned down. It's like a personal judgment. Well, I'm not worth anything, or I'm not good. It hurts my feelings when somebody doesn't buy from me. And that can really stop people from even venturing into this business, so forth. So what we did is we asked people those questions about, how are you feeling about this? So do you have experience? How much money do you plan to risk for this? Have you ever written a business plan? If not, would you like to, or let me take another example. If you're really anxious about selling, would you like to see a video or talk with someone else who answered these questions exactly like you did when they started, and who has become very successful in their business. So just connecting with somebody else, which was kind of at the root of the question that we have on the table right now, can be far better than writing any specific training for that. If you can just connect with somebody else who's probably really excited about sharing how they overcame their fears or how they got help. I didn't become a business planner. I found somebody to sit down with who asked me pertinent questions and walked me through it. And I've been working on that business plan ever since. So how do other people solve these problems? How do they become joyful, competent performers? And one way is to use our digital platform to connect people together. If we can't do it live, and we couldn't always do that with Mary Kay, we made videos of people who've been very successful, by first asking them to fill out, do you remember how you felt when you started? Answer these questions, created that profile for us to match with somebody who actually is just starting out. And now you can see the video for this person telling you how they met their challenges. So there are lots of ways to design this learner journey that can be so very much more powerful than the typical training programs that don't seem to care at all, or at least recognize how people might be feeling, what they might be worried about, what they might be thinking about, because we assume that they should just be grateful to be taking our training, and they should find every little pearl of wisdom that we're going to share with them a gift, right?
Well, I think you're right. It's even more kind of a omnipresent situation now because of the pandemic and how that led us to change how we work in so many ways. And you and Stacy must be mind melding a bit, because she just made a comment around, because this is Stacy's question. It's so important to maintain connection between people as human beings rather than just as people who do a certain job. And I think that's become even more kind of center stage for us in learning over the last year. So great comments. And kind of continuing on that post-COVID, as we start emerging in some respects out of COVID, although there are pockets of still a struggle going on. But as we start thinking beyond the lockdowns and all of that, it's really important to sort of think about how we're going to move forward as L&D. And this question comes from Tia, as well as Tim, and they're really asking about e-learning just post-COVID. So will it become even more important in a post-COVID world where there probably will be increased remote workforces, distributed workforces, a more academic world? Or will there be an emphasis on other forms of virtual learning that might meet needs for live, real person interaction? And so it's kind of building on Stacy's question, about that human connection and that human interaction in a digital and mediated by technology kind of world.
Well, as once said, predictions are difficult, especially about the future. Yeah. So we don't really know how things are going to play out, but you can't help but observe the conflicting forces that are at play right now. And I feel like there's a lot of turmoil. Companies and schools, academic organizations, really not sure what to do next, where to go, and what's going to work, what's not going to work long term. And what we do know is that organizations were not prepared for the pandemic. And we can discuss whether they ought to have been or not. And I have to say that if many of these organizations had created great e-learning experiences, they wouldn't have had the problems that they've had now, and now feel like they're hard pressed to come up with something fast. And we all know that workflow is going to change permanently in some ways. I can say that my company has people working remotely And in many ways, never skipped a beat. We just kept going right along as before. In some cases, I think our productivity went up a little bit. In other cases, I think we suffered some by not having more serendipitous conversations, and water cooler type stuff, which is really important. And it's hard to feel as connected to people through digital media as it is face to face. And so something is lost there, but some efficiency has risen. And what we have found now is that as we're hiring now at Allen Interactions, by the way, I get a plug in there. If any of you out there are great instructional designers, call us, because we're and what we think now is that it doesn't matter nearly as much as it used to where you live. We used to feel that our studios just all needed to be in one location. Not all the studios, but A Studios members needed to be in one location. But we've had great success with very talented people wanting to stay where they're living, understandably, and contributing. So how do we manage projects differently now? How do we report progress? How do we post problems? How do we get collective brainstorming for solutions, so forth? We're now turning increasingly to digital media to do some of those things. And even if we go back to the office, I think we'll still do that, So we use Mural quite a bit to put Post-it notes up on the screen, and we will probably do that in a hybrid sense when we go back to work. Some people will be putting Post-it notes on the wall, and other people will be putting them up on a screen right next to the wall, where we're working and so on. Kind of a trivial example, but work patterns are going to change. That's for sure. Effective training has had a pass, I think. I think L&D lots of times has just been kind of comfortable in the shadows, and just don't bother us and we won't bother you, right? And we know our thing. We know training, for example. You managers and executives, you don't know training. So, let's not talk about that, just let us do our thing, Well, it's bad for everybody, but it's kind of the legacy stance that I've seen a lot of organizations in. But now training is more essential than ever, because ineffective training was always sort of hidden by on-the-job guidance or asking a coworker. So you go through some training, it may look like you did well on the post test and so forth. Were you really skilled enough at the end of that to go do a job? You might have thought you were. Research says we think we are bad judges of how much we've learned. And we only realize how little we've learned when we go try to do a job that we've been trained for. And now we have a lot of questions, right?
Right.
And so poor training has just been masked by people asking others, how do you really do this? Or you quietly watch somebody else and then you parrot what they were doing, And so nobody went back and said that training really failed because it's not so apparent. It's not obvious. Now, those kinds of Band-Aids are not so readily available when we're working remotely and other ways. And it becomes much more apparent if somebody asks another worker to stop their work and to show them how to do something again, because time is tracked much more on the digital media than before. And some of these things are going to come up. This is good news for L&D if L&D will step up. And it's time to say, wait a minute, our workforce is kind of fundamental to our success. It's kind of ranks right up there, like maybe number one.
Right.
Right. And so we need to invest in this, not look at training as a cost to be minimized, but an investment for two reasons. One of them is competitiveness, and the other one is even more fundamental, and it's survival. Yeah. I think absolutely companies cannot survive on the level of training long term. So I have been thinking for some time that the term e-learning has become too generalized, and if a company says we're using e-learning, I really have no idea what they're doing. You know, they're publishing PDFs, so we have e-learning. You know, to me, you know, when I started with e-learning, which was, you know, way back in the late 60s and early 1970s, the big question was not can you teach with digital media, but can you teach as well or better than typical classroom training? You know, because we weren't interested in mechanizing this just for the mechanization of it, but could we give people a better learning experience? And through what has gone through a lot of name changes, you know, computer-based learning, computer-based training, computer-based education, and CAI, computer-assisted instruction, and so forth. You know, every few years we have to change terms, and I always laugh at that. I think now we have to change terms because e-learning is too big of an umbrella. And that's what most people are doing today is not going to help them survive nor compete in what they call e-learning. And so it's not a just rather have, this is a fundamental need, and it needs, in my opinion, to be experience-based. The only way we gain skills, we gain confidence, we are ready to perform where there may be risks of losing a client or having a plane go down or whatever it might be. You need to be practicing and you need to have the experience of what happens when you make a mistake and the experience of what you do things well. So I'm introducing a new acronym, XBL, for experience-based learning. And, you know, you could say it's a type of e-learning for sure, but just to call experience-based learning e-learning gives people the wrong expectation of what it is. This is not PowerPoint on steroids. This is a new thing, a different thing, where people can really learn, can really perform at the level corporations and even schools need for their graduates to be able to get meaningful jobs.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I think, you know, some of what we're faced with from last year, it sort of it set the stage for that inflection point, I think, where you're talking about where L&D is. And as we carve out the frontier of the future, what new practices or what deeper thinking do we bring to, you know, taking our businesses forward, because we are undergoing a massive job transformation as the digital age continues to unfold, and the shelf life of skills is getting shorter and shorter, and we're working longer, we're tending to have longer careers. And so we're going to need to continually develop ourselves. And that's something that we in L&D are responsible for. And it means that we have to do a fundamental rethinking of all of this. I love that XBL. I love that acronym. So here it is, folks. We now have a new acronym introduced today during our talk with Dr. Allen. And building on that a little bit around your talk about skills and skilling, what kind of reskilling or upskilling is going to become most critical, and how can that best be addressed with XBL or e-learning is how the question was posed, but how can we best address that with e-learning?
That is a really good question, of course. And yes, upskilling. So new skills are needed. We see it in our company and all of our clients' companies. They're using new applications, new cloud-based communications, very, very different ways of working. And as we were saying before, it can either help bring teams together, or it can sort of make teams dysfunctional. So what are employees looking for? You know, employers are looking for people who have a can-do attitude, because things are changing so fast that they need people who aren't focused on, I just do my job. I'm not responsible for anything else. I just do my job. If only everybody else would do their job. Well, right? But organizations succeed based on people who focus on the organization's success. We need to do this. I could help with that because that's falling behind. But I need to learn quickly how to do some of those tasks because I haven't been doing those paths. Oh, if you have great individualized, adaptive learning, you should be able to key in that I really need to know how to do this accounting right now. And that should just pop up for you right now. And you should get the principles. You should have the opportunity to do actually some of that kind of, maybe it's project accounting, do some of that project accounting right there. And tomorrow, team, I will be ready to take some of that responsibility off your shoulders so that we can make sure that we're going to meet our deadline, rather than I do my job, and if my job is done, don't bother me, and I think this is kind of a revolutionary change in organizations who are expecting employers to be quickly adaptable, to not think, to define themselves as within my narrow job, but rather to define themselves as a resource to my team, to the organization, for us to succeed. And that's going to mean continuous training, spots of training, not big classes all the time, but just spots of training. Oh my gosh, I need to do that. I've never done that before, but you guys need to keep working. So I'm going to get my training right now. I may have a couple questions, but I'm going to get it done right now. And this makes very versatile teams that I think are going to become the future expectation of employers. And so they need to be the expectations of employees preparing themselves now. And that's where the big employment opportunities are going to be, if you ask me. So I know, restaurants are having a hard time finding staff and so forth. If you can do more than one thing for a restaurant, you're more than twice as valuable to them, because they need that flexibility, need you to fill in when this need is greatest and over there for that other need. And so I really think that's kind of upskilling. Building a personal network is really, really important. A lot of us turn to YouTube quickly when we need help on something, and that could be can be a great resource. But so can a personal network where you can get online quickly and talk to somebody and say, I'm thinking of doing this, but you do this all the time. What are the risks? What are the mistakes that I'm most likely to make? Because I just need some advice right now. So I think this whole landscape is going to evolve in positive ways. I think it's nothing like catastrophe to lead to an improved future, right? And we've got the catastrophe, so let's hope it results in a great future.
Fantastic, great answer. And kind of on that topic of reskilling and upskilling, because we're right at our time. We could go on, I could go on for hours. We need to almost serialize this and make this a continuing conversation. But on that topic, that is one reason I've become associated with Allen Academy, because it is very important for us in this practice to keep sharpening our skills and really keep building not only our network, like you're saying, but building our capabilities as our practice changes and as we become more integrated into other parts of talent management and even talent acquisition in some respects. And I would recommend everyone check out Allen Academy, along with all sorts of other opportunities that are out there for sharpening your skills. But that's one reason I just wanted to share with you and with the audience here that I got involved with Allen Academy, so that we can have really good discussion and networking and skill building for those of us in our practice. So it's been a great experience so far. And thank you so much, Dr. Allen, for coming online today and sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us. I really appreciate it. And everyone who joined us today, thank you so much for joining us and also providing us these great questions. We could go on for hours with these. We will actually be putting together a blog. There were several questions that didn't get answered, but we're going to put together a blog and try to give more detail on all the questions that came to us. So I'll turn it right back over to Carrie. And again, thank you, Dr. Allen, for your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you both. That was wonderful. What a great discussion. So much more to talk about. Like Brandon said, we should be just focusing on one thing. You could talk about each one of those questions for a full 45 minutes to more than that. So again, thank you all for attending. As Brandon mentioned, we will be sharing a follow-up blog with unanswered questions and the recording link to this time together we had today and some other resources as well that we shared out. We'll include that in the follow-up email too, to the Allen Academy and other resources. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
And be sure to check out Brandon's new book. I did put the links in there to the course in the book, his new L&D playbook for the digital age. Oh, some good comments in the chat. Rich, are we done recording?
Yes, we're done recording, and I've showed everybody the door.
Yep, I see everybody's got.
I've ushered them out of the the auditorium.
Are we still live on YouTube?
Nope, we're off. Oh, we should be off. Oh, I guess we are still live.
It still says we're live.
I thought I